Hello, welcome back to the Stationary Dev, and also welcome back to another fountain pen review. This is a pen that is new to me. I recently got and reviewed a Pilot Vanishing Point Decimo, which I mentioned I liked better than the regular Pilot Vanishing Point, simply because I like the thinner format of the Decimo. I felt like I have a little bit more control. It's a little bit easier for me with the clip too to have like get a good grip on the pen. And interestingly, around the same time, my attention was drawn to a Ensso pen. They kind of do really cool machined pens and stuff like that. And this one is a retractable one that they've come out with, I believe, earlier this year or early 2024, and it's called the Bolt, and it is a retractable pen. As you can tell from the title, it does use a bolt action to get the nib out instead of like the click that you have with the Decimo. And which I have around here somewhere. Let me see. There we go. So the Decimo has a click that brings the nib out, and the Ensso takes a little bit different approach, a little bit like a regular ballpoint or something with a bolt action thing. So we're going to take a look at it. I believe they started this pen as a Kickstarter, and so the first batch was a Kickstarter of titanium fountain pens. And then from there, I believe they're just going to kind of do batches of them. And this was the next batch after the titanium batch. They did a batch, or are doing a batch of brass pens. And so this is the brass, super simple packaging. Doesn't come with any instructions or anything like that. I'm sure they have all the information online, or you can watch other people's reviews of it as well to figure out how to use this thing and take it apart or what to do with it. But really simple packaging, which I like. And it also came with these, which we'll get to here in a minute. So that's all that came in the box. Here's the pen. It's really pretty. Like I said, this is the brass version, so it is machined completely out of brass. The knob, the actual bolt action, and we'll see the insides are machined out of brass as well. This was originally listed, I think, well, the titanium one, well, the first one that came out, I believe it was under $100. I believe it was like $85 or something like that. Then they came out with the brass version, and this batch was listed at $120, which I think is still worth it. I was still going to buy it at that price. But then I think at the beginning of December, they did a sale on them, which brought the price down to $96. And that was just a no-brainer for me. So I went ahead and pulled the trigger, and for $96, got this fully machined, really pretty, retractable fountain pen. So like I said, it is a bolt mechanism. It does work just like a sort of typical pen, bolt action pen would, where if you press the bolts over, you see the nib comes out. It has a nib and a feed that comes out there. Looks pretty similar to like the Vanishing Point kind of style nib, where it's kind of slightly conical. This one is conical, I guess, a little bit. But it's similar to that kind of Vanishing Point in terms of how it looks. And we'll see the insides here in a little bit. And then snaps back. This being all brass is really smooth. So it's a really smooth system. And this is just with it being new. We'll see the part that keeps the nib in place will kind of hold, when it's new like this, it'll kind of get stuck in there because it's still kind of wearing in. So it kind of has a little wear in period to get the seal kind of worn in. So if I unscrew it, like I said, it unscrews just like a regular ballpoint, and we'll get to there. But in here, we'll see if the camera will focus, but you can see a little rubber seal in there. You can see it better on that side. There you go. And the rubber seal is cut in a cross, and so it is literally just a piece of rubber that's cut in a cross, and the nib, when it's deployed, pokes it up through that. But when it's not deployed, it's completely sealed off. And they did plenty of tests. I think it mentions on the website that it'll stay for, the nib will stay wet for, you know, weeks or something like that. This part unscrews, and that's where these come in. So if this were to ever wear out, which I don't think it will, or it'll take a long time for it to actually like wear out to where maybe once one of those flaps stays open or something, and your nib starts drying out. I don't think it's going to get to that point in a long time, but if it ever does, they send 2 more seals, and to get to that, you just unscrew this part, and then you can poke out that seal down there with something. I don't know, you'd have to have maybe a needle. This is what I'm going to ink it with in a minute, but you can probably get it out with the needle. But you can see kind of how that works with the nib coming through there. And so when it's new though, because it's brand new, it's going to take a couple times of just activating that nib to kind of get that loose enough to where it, you know, doesn't grab and hold on to that nib unit, because it's still very new and rigid enough to where it seals back or wants to hold that seal. So I'm going to screw this back in, and we'll get to the rest of the pin. Once again, all of this is brass on this model. With the titanium model, everything was made out of titanium, including, we'll see, part of the nib unit. So the nib unit slides out. It has sort of a standard kind of ballpoint spring, but this one's a little higher quality than a standard ballpoint spring. And then the actual nib unit is here. So it comes with a converter installed. I believe this is just a standard international converter that's installed on the nib unit here. And I guess this is kind of the feed, I guess, the nib unit and feed all in one. Let me go ahead and make sure that's back on. There we go. So nib unit and feed, you can see a little bit of branding there. And so if I pull that off, there you go. Just a standard international converter. I don't think you can use this with cartridges, or if you do, you can only use it probably, I'd imagine, with the long cartridges, like the standard international long cartridges, but I think mostly it's intended to just be used with a standard international converter. You have this piece, which is the piece that kind of fits inside and keeps everything lined up, fits inside the barrel, and so it is machined out of brass. On this model, it was machined out of titanium on the titanium pin. And then you have the nib unit, which is sort of this conical nib that's wrapped around the feed there. Yeah, really effective. And that's one of the new things they had on the brass model. I believe the titanium model, they only had medium and fine. But on the brass model, they also released an extra fine nib unit as well. And so I got the extra fine because that's what my Decimo is. That's what I like. So I got the extra fine on it. And I believe he said these nibs are made in Japan. I think they come from Japan, the nibs themselves, and he obviously machines the rest of the pin. Now, the only downside of the pin, it can come with a clip, so you can get a clip on it as well, where you basically unscrew this part, put a clip on, and then there's like a cap piece that screws in on top to hold the clip in. I don't want a clip or need a clip. The knob for me is enough of a roll stop to work for me. Now, the tricky bit that I was mentioning earlier is if you are really specific about trying to get the nib, like the upside of the nib lined up with the bolts, that's where it becomes a little bit tricky in my experience so far. Because if you put it in kind of like you would expect, like that's pretty lined up, put the spring on, put the nose cone on, and then I click the pin Oh, it actually stayed pretty lined up, but not totally. You can see it's rotated a bit from where the thing is. So I think it'd take a little bit of fidgeting just because of how it's made. There's no like channel or anything to keep the nib orientated to like the bolt. If you're really particular about that, it might take a little bit of fidgeting to get that lined up initially. But other than that, I don't think it's a problem because most people aren't going to grip it far enough back to where like having the bolts on your hand will be a problem. Like even here, my hand is still, you know, half an inch away from the bolt, so it's not going to be a problem for me. And you see it kind of just holds on there. Interesting. Yeah, so it can kind of hold the nib eventually there. And we'll see once I get it inked, it'll also have like an inky nib. So if like nib, whatever it's called, nib creep bothers you, this might not be the pen for you because it has nib creep just because of the way that that seal works. And there's no way to really keep the nib clean if that's a problem for you. So maybe that's a downside for you. It's not for me. So I'm going to ink it, like I said, with the, I'm going to just syringe fill it. You can just dip it in a bottle. This fits really tightly onto the actual nib, so I don't think you'd like have to worry about losing the nib unit in the bottle of ink. So I'm not really worried about that. I'm just going to ink it with the syringe just because I don't want to tip over a bottle or deal with any of that stuff. So I'm going to inking it with Majestic Blue. This is going to kind of be my daily driver pen for the next month, while I probably send out my Decimo to be looked at. And so I'm going to be inking it with Majestic Blue, a good office blue ink, but is really interesting. It's a darker blue with a lot of sheen from Diamine. So we're going to get that inked up and give it just a little bit of a shake without moving the camera too much. Get a good draw of ink here. And fill up the converter. So that's another good thing that it has over the Decimo is it's not reliant on the Con 40 converter, which is awful. It does take a standard international converter, so it holds more ink, and it actually fills up with ink. If you want to fill the converter from the bottle, it doesn't have a problem doing that, which is nice and how a pen should work, if you ask me. So I'm going to put that up there. We're going to insert the nib unit back into the converter. Like I said, a very snug fit, but we can get it in there. And then we're going to drop this into the pen. And I already got ink droplets everywhere. I'm going to try to line it up a little bit. Put the spring on. You can't even see what I'm doing, but put the spring in, and then we're going to screw nose cone on. I'm going to put the bottle back on there. Get that out of the way. Wipe up any dots of ink. And we'll give it a test, a writing test. So I did a decent job of getting the nib aligned there, but it's probably not going to write right off the bat. I'm probably going to have to prime it. So I'm going to do that real quick and then be right back. All right, and we're back. So I just primed the feed up there, which took a little bit more work than the vanishing point usually does, but it's about the same because it's a really long feed, so it kind of does the same kind of thing. I'm just going to write on some Rhodia 80 GSM dot pad paper here. So we're going to deploy that. There is our nib there. Kind of rotates about 90 degrees, I think. I'm going to move this in slightly just so you can see how it writes. So we have Let me give it just a couple little, very smooth. We have the Ensso Bolt. This has a extra fine steel nib. Ink we are writing with is Diamine Majestic Blue. Very smooth, like I said, for an extra fine. It's like a Western extra fine, I'd say for sure, not a like Japanese extra fine. Very smooth, fairly wet as far as I can see. For an extra fine, that's pretty wet. This is a wetter, sort of more saturated ink. Let me try to get it to do there. So we'll probably get a little bit, with how wet this is, we'll probably get a little bit of the sheening as well. Let me do a quick test write. We have the Fine Boxing Wizards jumping quickly. Quick fast writing feed keeping up. Yeah, no problems there. Write's pretty wet. Once you get the ink going, it's gonna keep bringing it. Very wet. Like I said, about what you would expect for a Western extra fine. I'm gonna see, you can kind of see, we're getting some of the sheen from the ink there. I don't have the best lighting to show it right now, and this is Rhodia paper, so it's not the best at going to be showing the ink there, but yeah, the only thing I would say, writing with it, it feels really good and really nice to not have to worry about having a clip up here. So I think that's going to be a big selling point for it, is that you don't have to worry about a clip or anything getting in your way. Two things actually. One, because it doesn't have a clip and it's such a conical nib shape, it's hard. I think it might be hard to kind of tell if you're like properly aligned, but I mean, it's doing a pretty good job at writing at all angles. So I think you have a bit of a leeway, at least in this extra fine nib, and like writing at a weird angle and it's still writing fine. So I don't think you have to worry too much about it being the proper writing angle. So that's one thing that, you know, as long as you're not holding it upside down, it probably writes not bad upside down. A little bit of a finer line, but pretty smooth upside down. So even if you do write with it upside down, it's okay. The other thing is balance. For me, you have this chunk of brass back here and probably this end cap here that's a chunk of brass, all in the back. So it's a little back weighted, but it's not unbalanced. Like I think the balance point's still probably right there, right in the middle. It's just a little farther back. I usually kind of, if I can, get it closer to the grip section. But because it's kind of a slender, long pen, so with it having so much weight back here, it's not, you know, it's not perfect for me. But it still feels great. It is, I think, well balanced and still feels great there. You can see the nib is starting to retract there. I don't have to tap it anymore there, and so that's good. But yeah, and as I watched other reviewers, as they use it, that little seal kind of breaks in and it gets a lot smoother even than it already is to the retracting and everything. So that is the Bolt. I'm going to give it a full test this next month and trying to put it through its paces, use it as an EDC kind of daily driver pin at the office and in my bag, and taking notes at home and doing whatever with it. Maybe using it for some longer writing sessions, which I think this will be a little bit better for longer writing sessions than something like a Decimo or Vanishing Point. Here's the comparison. So I think it's even a little slimmer than a Decimo, but about the same length with the clip with the click depressed. It's about the same length there. It is heavier than the Decimo, which you could expect being made out of full brass and everything, but you don't have that clip getting in your way. You can add a clip, but the clip adds on the back, so it doesn't add anything on the front where you're gripping the pen. So I think for under $100, even at $120 full price for this pen, I think it's an absolute steal. That's $40 at least, cheaper than a Decimo or a Vanishing Point. And this one is fully machined. It's a lot slimmer because its innards are a lot simpler because it works just like a typical ballpoint or something like that. And the simple deployment with the bolts just makes it a lot easier. There's a lot less things to go wrong. Even if something weird happens with the seal, they give you 2 more for free when they ship the pen to you, which I have here. And so you just pop in the new one and keep going. And so you get a better converter, you get no clip in the way, you get a fully machined pen that's really nice quality for a cheaper price than, you know, a offering from Pilot. Now they are different pens and there's pros and cons to both, but I think this is absolutely worth it. And I'm going to put it through its paces and give a little bit of a follow-up when it comes to the currently inked at the end of January probably is when I'll do the currently inked for this one, and I'll have written with it and kind of put it through its paces, and we'll see how it ends up. But so far, pretty impressed by this thing, and really excited to use it and get to know it and use it a little bit better. So appreciate you watching this video. If you don't mind, give it a like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. And leave a comment if you've tried the Ensso Bolt, if you have one, if you've just gotten one, if you want to get one. I'm sure they'll do more runs of different metals and hopefully add some different colors and options in there as well as they go and you know, start picking up some steam with this pen because I can definitely recommend it. It does have a very engineered architectural, I believe the guy that owns Ensso is an architect, and so it's a very engineering, architect-y kind of pen that I could see, you know, doing sketches with or whatever. So really cool pen. I'm excited to see what else they come out with, and I highly recommend it. So far I've been really impressed, just initial impressions. So I really appreciate it, and until next time, I'll catch you guys later.